no-knead bread. It's very simple. It's really good. Only uses 4 ingredients. We've got a cup and a half of water, quarter teaspoon of instant yeast. I like to use instant yeast, but you can use an active dry yeast if you like. If you use that, you're going to have to activate it by adding whatever sugar you're using, some water, and mix that together well. Let it sit for about 10 minutes or so before you use it. But if you use an active, or if you used an instant yeast, you can add it right to the flour and it will work. And a teaspoon and a half of salt and 3.5 cups of flour. Now, it's a very simple bread, but it does have a long proofing time, which is the amount of time that it has to sit to get things activated and working inside of the flour, and that's an 18-hour proofing time. Sometimes less, maybe 10 to 12 hours to 18 hours, which actually in some ways makes it easier, I think, because when you decide to make bread, you don't have to think you're going to go through the whole process. Like, it's evening now. I'm going to throw these ingredients together, and I won't have to think about it for another 18 hours. Okay. Basically what we're going to do is mix all the ingredients together and let them sit for about 18 hours before we move on to the next step. So we're going to add our water, a cup and a half of water, ¼ teaspoon of instant yeast, teaspoon and a half of salt, and 3.5 cups of flour, of bread flour. I'm using my Swedish bread hook, which I really like, but you could use a wooden spoon or a metal spoon, whatever you like to use, just anything. You could use your fingers, anything. You just want to make sure you get things mixed up. That's pretty good. Kind of pull it together a little bit. Cover it with some plastic. And I'll see you in about 18 hours. Okay, we're back. It's been about 18 hours, give or take, and we're ready for the next step. First thing I'm going to do with the bread, I'm going to fold it, which means you're going to kind of bring it up over top of itself, and I'm going to do that about 4 times. Now, this is a pretty wet dough. You might want to put a little bit of flour on your hands. Hold up, fold it, turn it, fold it. I'm going to do this all the way around 4 times. Now, the wet dough is a little harder to work with, but it'll give you nice large holes, which is what we're looking for in this type of a loaf. The one that I make is not quite as wet as some recipes, but it helps retain the shape a little bit better, and lets me score it a lot of times, which is something I'll show you in a bit. So after we've done that, we're going to lightly flour the work surface here. And pull my dough. You can see it's wet dough. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of flour on top. Here, you might want to make sure you get a little flour on your hand so it's a little easier to work. And I'm just going to take it and kind of form it into a ball. Trying to get a little bit of surface tension here. on this side. Try to get it to work the folds together underneath. Then I'm going to take a proofing bowl or a proofing basket, which is something that's the next step. We're going to leave it for about 2 hours, but you want to put it into something that's going to help hold the shape that you want it to be in when you start. So there are a couple things you can do. I like to use a proofing basket, but there's a good chance you don't have a proofing basket. So what you can do is just find a small bowl, something that's going to give you kind of the shape that you're imagining. I actually messed up my first video a little bit, so the one that I did yesterday. So I have 2 balls of dough here, and I can show you what happens in each of those. So you're just going to get that together like that, pick it up. Oh, make sure that you spray or wipe oil in your bowl if you're using a bowl, because you're going to take this and dump it into the whatever you're going to be cooking the bread in. So you don't want it to stick. So that, and I like to sprinkle a little bit of cornmeal on top, which is actually going to be the bottom of your loaf. This will help keep it from sticking in the pan and adds kind of a nice crunchy base. Then you're going to take a clean towel, just put a clean dry towel over the top of it, and we're going to let that sit for about 2 hours. When it comes time to bake your bread, ideally, if you can use something that encloses the bread, keeps the steam in, you're going to have better results. You'll have a really nice crisp crust. It's worth it. So I like to use my ceramic cloche. It works very well. You could use a Dutch oven. If you don't have that, that's fine. You can use, today I'll be using a pie plate because I only have one cloche. I don't have a Dutch oven. It works fine. You won't get quite the results that you do with something like this, but it works perfectly fine. If you don't have that, use an oven-safe casserole. If you don't have that, use a cookie sheet. You won't have the same results, but you'll still have a good loaf of bread. When I get closer to time to when I'm going to bake the bread, I'm going to put these in the oven. I'm going to preheat these in the oven at 480 degrees. And so we're going to be doing that in a minute. I've got my oven preheated to 480. I've got my bread ready to go. I have 2 of them here. The one you watched me make, and then another one that I started last night after I messed up the first video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these. I've got the cloche and the plate in the oven. I'm going to open them up and dump them in there. And then I'm going to score the surface. It's just a razor blade on the end of this, about 1/4 of an inch in to the top of the bread. The bread's going to crack in different places as it rises in the oven. So by scoring it, it just lets you determine where you want those cracks to be. Some people can get really decorative with it and with leaf patterns and all sorts of different things. I'm not so great with my scoring, and also this is a very wet bread, so that kind of limits what you're going to be able to do with the scoring the top. But I'm going to try to do it just a little bit on the top of that. We'll close things back up, and then I'm going to leave it cook at 480 for 15 minutes. Then I'm going to turn the temperature down to 450 and cook it for another 30 minutes before I take it out. So you can see I've got the cloche and the pie plate. Score it a little bit. You try to get them as centered as you can. I didn't do such a great job with the one. And that's it. I'm going to leave it in there for 15 minutes and then turn the temperature down to 450 and go for another 30 minutes. Okay, the bread has been baking for about 45 minutes. The first 15 minutes at 480 and then another half an hour at 450. And it's time to take it out, see what we got. Okay. There's our first loaf. There's our second loaf. All right, I'm going to let these loaves cool, and then we'll cut them open and see what we got. Okay, the bread is cool, and let's slice into a piece here and see what it looks like on the inside. There we go. Looks pretty good. I think I'll have a piece. And that's homemade bread. Thank you for watching. And now I'm going to enjoy a slice with some homemade pesto.